How you doing, guys? BC90 here with another video today discussing poise mechanics and builds that utilize the overhauled poise mechanics in version 1.08. Now this is going to be a shorter video today as I'm not going to be doing a PvP montage. I'm just going to be discussing how my builds utilize the overhauled poise mechanics. And again, as I've mentioned in my first video, I am using the refined Poise calculator version 1.08, which was submitted via Reddit by user Sir Halvard. So thanking you again, Sir Halvard. It is a very accurate Poise calculator. I have play tested it extensively, and I can tell you that its breakpoints are on point. Now, I'll get straight onto the discussion here, guys. Looking at our equipment table. Now look, I've changed up my setup here, guys. I'm not going to get into that in this video. I'll be doing a separate PvP montage using this setup with a refined Lothric Greatsword in a separate video. Basically all I want to talk about here is how my builds utilize the poise mechanics. So, going from the poise calculator, using an Ultra Greatsword, we need a base poise armor of 45.81 to be able to consecutively hyper armor through any two-handed R1 in the game except for great hammers. Now a lot of people might say to you, oh hey, that's not accurate, I've had less poise and been able to hyper armor through another attack. Now this is only true in terms of your opponent's first attack. So their first hit, you do need less individual poise armor. So using an Ultra Greatsword, you only need 32.26 poise to be able to survive that first hit. But my builds here focus on consecutive trading. So my builds focus on the ability to keep swinging while not getting staggered yourself. And in order to do that, we need a base poise of 45.81 using an Ultra Greatsword. Now, if you're maining a Great Hammer, I'm pretty sure you need less poise than this to be able to hyper armor consecutively, so just have a look at that calculator, guys, and see how it works for you. But for me, using an Ultra, we need 45.81 for those consecutive sweet trades. Now, another thing to note, guys, a lot of people might tell you, oh hey, that's inaccurate, I've been staggered out of my animations, even though my poise armor is above the breakpoint and I'm wielding a heavy weapon. Now this has to do with your startup frames and your active frames. Now fellow YouTuber Big Hat Logan, if I'm not mistaken, has a very detailed video on these mechanics. It's about 20 minutes long. I do suggest you guys check it out to get a more in-depth guide on your startup frames, your active frames, etc. But basically, to break it down, what it means is your startup frames, they are in effect at the start of your swing. So if you're starting your attack using an Ultra and your opponent hits you first, they will stagger you, okay? So it's about getting your timing right. Your aim is to time your hits, or I should say time your opponent's hits, while you're already actively in your swing, which means you're already in your active frames. Now this will trigger the ability to consecutively hyper armor through your opponent's attacks. So remember, guys, don't let them hit you when you're starting up, okay? Make sure you're like mid-swing or well within your active frames to be able to consecutively swing. Now, another thing I'd like to note here, guys, I will be keeping my stats at soul level 125 with these attributes for most of my videos, because I do think they're the most effective for a variety of weapons that utilize the poise mechanics. I will be changing up these stats when I do Great Hammers, because obviously Great Hammers require a greater strength investment, but for now we'll keep these stats static, and the only thing we're worried about is our poise value. Now, another thing to note here, guys, is your armor. Havel's armor has the highest poise values in the game, so I would recommend using this above anything else if you want those consecutive trades. Another thing that I think is absolutely essential for this build is +2 rings. Now, +2 rings aren't essential for every build. I mean, some builds do very well with just +1 or their normal iterations. But for this particular build at soul level 125, we need the +2 iterations of these rings. Why? Because we need a higher equipment load. Now, as I've mentioned in my first video, vitality is our most important stat here, as our higher vitality, which is currently at 50, means we can equip heavier armor and weapons, and our base defenses also get an increase. Now, on top of that vitality at 50, we need the Ring of Favor +2 and the Havel's Ring +2. Both these rings increase your equipment load, and this means we can wear heavy armor, and we can also main a heavy weapon while maintaining our weight ratio below 70%. So this means no fat rolls, guys, which is very important in combat, that you don't have those fat rolls, because you're already using a slow weapon. On top of that, as I've mentioned in my first video, I prefer versatility in my builds. I think this is essential in the meta level, as you will have a lot of unfavorable matchups with a slow weapon. So I prefer to have something I can finish people off with, something I can punish mistakes with, and obviously something I can parry with to counter that vicious R1 spam. So I do think these +2 rings are essential. I also think the Chloranthy +2 is essential here, rather than its base or +1 iteration, because these bad boys, these heavy weapons, they take up a lot of stamina, as you can see up there. So stamina management is also a very important thing with these types of builds. You don't want to be doing this, guys. Just swinging, hoping for the best, and then getting into that negative stamina up there, which will mean it takes a little bit longer to recover, and you will be left wide open for attack. So avoid doing that. Stamina management is important. I would suggest getting 2 swings in at most, roll, counter attack, and be able to roll again if you need to. So stamina management is something you need to be aware of with these builds, because if you get into that negative stamina zone, you will get punished quite heavily. So that pretty much breaks it down for you there, guys, the poise mechanics that this build utilizes. Again, keeping our poise above that breakpoint of 45.81, using an ultra great sword to be able to consecutively hyper armor through any two-handed R1 in the game, except for those great hammers. So yeah, have a look at that calculator, guys, and like I said, I have changed my setup a little bit here. I will be doing a separate PvP montage and getting into the specifics of this setup in a separate video. But for now, if you like this video, hit the like button. Again, if you start enjoying my content, please subscribe. Otherwise, thank you for watching.